Julie, Deb, and then Phillip?
And then you.
Okay. All right, how's that look?
You can just get in a little bit tighter and then we're good.
Okay.
Okay. Cindy, don't cover your face. Let's see your face. Unless you want to. Okay. All right. You're good there. All right, whenever you're ready.
Hi, today is a great day in South Carolina because I have the privilege and opportunity to publicly stand for Sheri Few for State Superintendent of Education. I served with Mika Childs as a member of the South Carolina Education Oversight Committee, as well as having served as a Greenville County trustee, an Anderson University trustee, and fought Common Core along with Senator Mike Fair on the EOC. Ms. Childs, I should say, missed a perfect opportunity to take a strong vocal stand against Common Core when she served with me on the EOC. Mika Childs was MIA, missing in action. Parents, students, and even teachers suffer the consequences of decisions that are made by school administrators, education bureaucrats, legislators, and federal politicians, and that's why we need Sheri Few as education superintendent to take her work to continue her work as an advocate for children, parents, and good teachers to the next level. As superintendent, Sheri will stop Common Core, begin a textbook review to weed out those with anti-American and anti-Christian bias, and fight for school choice through school vouchers. I stand in full support of Sheri Few for State Superintendent of Education. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Deb Marks, and I serve as Vice President on a national board, Citizens for Objective Education. And I'm here to support Sheri Few for Education Superintendent and set the record straight regarding the controversial science standards. Despite what Mika Childs says, the South Carolina State Science Standards passed this year are a slightly revised version of the Common Core Next Generation Standards. COPE examined the preliminary state science standards in July of 2013 and found, amazingly enough, that the list of standards was identical to the second draft of the NGSS standards published in January 2013. Not similar to or patterned after, but exactly the same, i.e. word for word. The final NGS standards published in April of 2013 have some wording changes from this second draft. South Carolina supported and basically when they rewrote their standards, what they proposed was similar, again, in wording, i.e. content, to NGSS. COPE has evaluated not only the national NGSS science standards, they have also evaluated science standards of every state in the United States, to include South Carolina's. COPE's report documents several objections to the NGSS, and the board, of which I'm a member of, strongly recommends against their adoption. COPE believes that the likely effect of exposing children beginning in kindergarten to NGSS will be to indoctrinate them into accepting a materialistic, atheistic worldview. This is neither educationally appropriate nor constitutionally acceptable. Parents and teachers opposed to Common Core are concerned that Common Core in South Carolina will be replaced by something virtually identical under another name. If Mika Childs' actions implementing the South Carolina science standards are any indication, then the concern that she will do exactly that as superintendent, in my opinion, are very real. The only choice for those who want to stop Common Core in this state right now is to elect Sheri Few, and I am honored to support her. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Phillip Bowers. I currently serve on the South Carolina Education Oversight Committee. Prior to that, I served 4 years on the South Carolina State Board of Education. Sheri's being attacked because she argued that there's no appreciable difference between the Common Core Next Generation Science Standards and the ones adopted earlier this year by the state. But she's right, there is no appreciable difference. I've read all of them, and there's just not very limited differences. Was pointed out, a little bit of verbiage change, not much. Similarly, there are candidates who say they're against Common Core, but if history's a guide, they will merely implement them anyway under a different name, as has been done in Indiana, Arizona, and Oklahoma. Common Core and education decisions made by outsiders must stop. Sheri Few will work to stop that. The relentless attack by liberals to indoctrinate our children and turn them away from conservative Christian values is the biggest problem facing our public schools today. Sheri understands that, and Sheri Few will do something about it. One matter that concerns me greatly is our elected officials who surrender control of our children to outsiders. I don't like the idea of outsiders having the final say in what our children learn. Common Core is just the latest attempt toward that end, going back to Goals 2000, School to Work, No Child Left Behind, and so many others. Liberals have long sought control of our schools because today those who control our schools, our compulsory education system, that is, control the values taught to our children. These are some of the reasons I support Sheri Few, and I encourage all conservatives and any voter really who is concerned about public education to support Sheri Few. She is the right choice for education in South Carolina. Thank you.
Well, thank you to Julie and Deb and Phillip for their gracious endorsement of my candidacy here today. I really appreciate their remarks and their bold stand with me, not only in my candidacy and our fight against Common Core, but also in their defense of my position regarding the science standards. On Tuesday, there was a publicized, televised debate, and I pointed out the fact that Sharmika Childs had been responsible for pushing through the next generation science standards, better known as the Common Core Science Standards. And that has been challenged by the state newspaper and has been challenged as I've been talking about it across the state. So it means a lot to me that my colleagues have stood with me here today, and a national organization of scientists who have reviewed the standards and also support my position that the content of the science standards that were pushed through by Sharmika and the Zay's administration through the State Board of Education are indeed in content the same. There are very few changes that were made, and I appreciate their support in that. In addition to that, it's very troublesome to me that administration, led by Sharmika's efforts, intentionally circumvented the law. There was a proviso that prevented our State Department of Ed from adopting those standards. So rather than adopting the standards, they did a little window dressing and slapped a new name on them and pushed them through anyhow. And that is a great concern to me as far as the integrity of this administration and their attempt to circumvent the law. And those are the points that I've been trying to make, especially related to our situation we're facing now with the Common Core standards, as the Common Core standards will now be left in the hands of the next superintendent of education. And the Democrats have already claimed that that's exactly what will happen, is that we will just simply put a new name on them and they will become South Carolina standards. Beyond that, Sharmika Childs has been campaigning saying that she will write South Carolina standards for South Carolina children. And what has happened in this case is she took national standards and put a South Carolina name on them. So she hasn't been true to her word, and I don't think she can be trusted to do that in the future. Beyond that, the content of the science standards that she defends include a defense of man-made global warming, which is not a conservative position. And in addition to that, there is the sole theory of evolution in these standards. And as was brought to light in the debate on Tuesday, I was the only candidate that articulated a position that says children should receive an objective education. There is science and research on both sides of these controversial issues that are withheld from the public school classrooms. And if I'm elected superintendent of education, I will ensure that standards and classroom content include both sides of controversial issues where there is science to be heard, and that way children will receive an objective education. I appreciate again the support of these colleagues and their endorsement today, and those who have come out to the press conference. Thank you. Are there any questions?
These standards from the new next generation, which one specifically? Which one is, or which ones are you concerned about that are exactly the same, you say, as the one from South Carolina?
Well, what we provided in your press packet is just a preliminary set of the correlation. We will provide more to you. Those are the, I think what's stated there, the biology standards that we've done a side-by-side comparison of. So you can see that they are aligned. The ones, and I'll be glad to explain that to you one-on-one if you'd like. But what we've done in that comparison is we've shown you that the NGSS standards and the South Carolina standards are the same, in the exception where they've included some of the previous standards. That's the only area that they differ. So we'll have more to follow up with you on that.
So in other words, you're being critical of the current administration in the part of the science program and that part that was approved by the legislature.
It was approved by the State Board of Education.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, and it was Sharmika Child's position. She oversaw the writing of those standards and brought those to the State Board of Education. And so in this race for Superintendent of Education, I have brought that to the attention of the voters because, first of all, there was a proviso that prohibited the use of those national standards, the NGSS, or better known as the Common Core Science Standards. Our state legislature did not want our State Department using those standards, so they prohibited it through law. And actually the first draft, as was pointed out by Deb Marks, the first draft that came out was word for word those standards. And our nonprofit organization, led by Deb Marks, she's the one that's been following this issue, brought to their attention that it was illegal for them to propose those standards. So they pulled those standards back, and that's when they did what I call some window dressing. They laced them with some of the previous standards and put a new name on them, and about 20 days later, after a year and a half of a review process, 20 days later they slipped them back out and put them up for first reading. So there's problems with the whole process here, and there's problems with the integrity of what's being said now. They're saying that these are South Carolina standards based on the previous standards, and we know that that's not the case.
Can I say something on that?
Certainly. Phillip would like to follow up on that.
And part of the problem with that is, with those of us who've been involved with education for a number of years know that the next step, that folks are going to continue to push these Common Core Science standards. Well, in a year or two or whenever they come back, if we get the wrong administration in, they'll say, oh, well, our standards are almost identical to Common Core standards anyway, because they are. And what they'll do is they'll throw up their hands and say, well, since they're so close next to Common Core Science standards, we'll just go ahead and adopt Common Core Science standards. And that it's just a stepping stone. And that's part of the problem with adopting even a portion of these next generation standards, is because it just gets us inches us closer to Common Core Science standards, which the legislature made it abundantly clear that South Carolina does not want. So, thank you.
That's right. Thank
So
you.
in other words, it was Nick Chase that came up with it and went through with it and passed it in front of the education.
Well, ultimately, Dr. Zais is responsible, but Sharmika was charged with that task. It was her responsibility.
But he has to put his blueprint on it.
Yes.
So it is his.
Well, ultimately, yes.
Okay.
And he has endorsed Sharmika Child's, so that's relevant as well. But if you look in the science standards that were approved and you go into page 3, it clearly says that she was in charge of this writing team. So she's the one who oversaw the development and the design of those standards.
And the revised biology standard that the EOC has adopted, sent back to the state board, I guess. You in support of that, with the questioning of Darwinism?
Well, I am in support of the recommended amendments to that, absolutely, that came out of the EOC. Was that the EOC? And Phillip could talk better to those because he knows where that process is.
Like Sheri said, there's evidence on each side, and I'm not saying there's not evolution, but basically what our science standards are going to say is evolution is the only way, and there's proof on both sides in many people's opinion, and there's certainly disapproval of a lot of the theories that are being promoted. So what Mike Farron and I would like to see, and a majority on the EOC, because we did vote to send it back, a majority voted to send it back, we would just like to see the truth. Telling children that evolution is the be-all, end-all to the way everything got on Earth is not true. We want the truth taught, and if there's other ways that it could have occurred, children should be able to hear that, be able to think through it, think objectively for themselves, and make a decision.
I'm going to say, and you know, that's one of the mantras of the Common Core standards. It's critical thinking. We're going to teach children to think critically. But this is the opposite of critical thinking.
Right.
Instead, what we're doing with these standards is we're telling children what to think instead of how to think. What we should be doing is giving them the science on all sides of the issue, especially controversial issues. If there's controversial issues in our culture, children should be given the scientific research on both sides of the issue and then be allowed to make their own decisions on those issues.
Did the EOC come back with anything on climate change, questioning?
Now that passed. That's all. Everything's passed through except the biology portion.
Unfortunately, there's only a couple of people like Phillip on that committee. We need more strong conservatives like Phillip on that committee. And you know, that's something that I will also try to champion as State Superintendent of Education, is I'm going to work with the state legislature who appoints the members of the EOC and the board to give me people that I can work with. Exactly. Because you can't, you know, champion conservative issues elected by conservative voters if you don't have a board and an EOC that you can work with. And that was my other point about Sharmika, claiming to be this conservative, and yet these are two issues that are clearly conservative issues, and she supports the liberal side on these issues.
And what's the relationship between Next Generation and Common Core?
Well, Next Generation science standards were developed by the same company, Achieve, and they are national standards, so they're the same in that regard. Same company developed them, same funding mechanisms behind them. What happened is...
Common Core became a bad word.
That's right. They recognized that the name was tainted, so they changed the name to Next Generation Science Standards. And that's what liberals typically do, is they rebrand things when they recognize that, and that's exactly what they plan to do with the Common Core standards in South Carolina. If we elect the wrong superintendent, they'll simply be rebranded. All right?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.